Kitt, I need your help.
I told you need to pull the nozzle up. Up.
No, I need you to sit in for Joe this week. He's out of town.
Excellent. How long is he gone?
He's terrorizing across the country in a murder car with Hawaiian print upholstery.
He doesn't have his license. That's terrifying.
Yes. Yes, it is.
So what movie are we doing?
Death Race 2000. And I'm really glad Joe's not here for this. There are no black people in this movie.
Yeah, this film can't call itself anti-racist. It's just anti-race.
I don't have crickets.
Aww.
Welcome to Does This Still Work? The podcast that looks at old movies and asks, does this still work? I'm George Romaka.
And I'm Kitt Nowokunski. And today we're discussing Death Race 2000 from 1975 and some historical context. First, podcasty stuff. You can reach us at dtswpod@gmail.com, on Facebook, Letterboxd, and on our YouTube channel. Please tell your friends about us, even the ones who don't like movies, and leave 5-star ratings for us everywhere. If possible, please. Please leave us a 5-star rating. You can pick what we watch and get extra per episode content by funding us on Patreon for as little as $1 per month at patreon.com/DTSWpod.
So, Kitt, why did you pick this film?
Well, I love David Carradine movies, whether they're good or bad. And it's classic dystopian, like science fiction, which is a big, it's a movie that I enjoy. But another reason why I picked it is because so many people reference things from this movie and they have they just have no clue about it.
Right.
They're like, I guess there was a movie about murdering people for points. This is it. This is the movie.
Okay, then.
George, take us back to 1975.
And this is the way it was.
This film is about a cross-country auto race in a fascist, futuristic dystopia. The race starts in New York, and one of the racers is a Nazi. So what was happening in New York with Nazis in 1975? Kitt, please read this headline from the January 7th, 1975 Suffolk edition of Newsday.
Yeah, so for non-patrons, after the episode, if you're a patron, you get to listen to a bunch of extra talking from George and Joe. And every other week, usually now, Joe has decided to do relationship advice columns. And George thought they needed someone to read those. So I do them in fantastic voices. But you don't get that here. You get an article that says, Nazi's wife wants out.
So Patricia Dowd had been married for 11 and a half years when she saw a newspaper article identifying her husband, Raymond, as a Nazi. He was working as an aide to a Nazi politician, Albert Brinkman, who was looking to get in with the Conservative Party. She immediately filed for divorce. She describes herself as a practicing Catholic and political conservative and said that Nazism is against everything she believes in. Quoting Miss Dowd,
I knew my husband was helping Brinkman run for office, and he talked about white power and things like that, but I didn't know they were Nazis.
End quote.
So I did do a voice. That's what you would hear.
Except usually much larger blocks of text.
Yeah, that's true.
And then a lot of commentary, because we don't just have Kitt read the thing.
Well, that just means I'm there for the after show, pretty much.
Yep. So, this fucking story.
Yeah.
So,
good story.
How would you feel if 11 years from now you saw a news article and George was a Nazi?
Well, for one, you used to speak in tongues, and that's already red
pretty
flag.
Close. Yeah.
You're not a Nazi now. I know that. No, you have to ask those questions of people that you were with. Though she thought he was just a regular run-of-the-mill white supremacist.
Right.
Like, she'd have been fine with him being the Klan, but the Nazis, because,
Because everybody hated the Nazis. You had to.
No, actually, the Klan wouldn't have been fine with her, because the Klan doesn't like Catholics.
No, that's true.
And then, that's fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
And no one really knows. I'm sure someone knows what the Nazis were. Please don't at us about this. I don't fucking care. Because people are always saying, like, Nazis were atheists, or they're Catholics, or they're this. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure they were whatever German people were.
Yep. My big thing is, and he'd talk about white power and things like that, but I didn't.
Yeah,
like how what? I mean, that might just be 1975 naivete.
Yeah.
But,
well, 1975, like, we just barely ended segregation.
Yeah.
So, which is a weird thing.
Yep.
Separate but equal.
Moving on.
That's what they mean.
Moving on. The racers have planned pit stops, the first of which is in St. Louis, Missouri. What was happening in St. Louis with racing in 1975? Kit, please read this headline from the March 23rd, 1975 St. Louis Post-Dispatch.
Lake Hill's new figure-8 races likened to Demolition Derbies.
Ivan Sims was an auto racing promoter and, according to the author, roly-poly. He had the idea to take a big oval racing track, gut the infield, and turn it into a figure-8 track. There'll be some dandies. It'll be a rollin' demolition derby, he said. The cars would have to cut through the middle twice every 20 laps, and without a visual, I'm stuck wondering why that doesn't mean once every 10 laps. The cars were worth $300, and the minimum prize was $600. So here we got somebody in Missouri thinking, let's turn driving in an oval more dangerous.
Yeah.
For funsies.
I mean, the lowest common denominator, you come to see a car crashing. That's why a lot of people go to racing events, is because they want to see a disaster and they're assholes.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if anything, this 1975 event could have been the thing that led to what they had in Death Race 2000. At least a stepping stone on the way there.
You know, so when I looked into the we'll talk about that later.
Okay.
Well, actually, you know what? We need to talk about this now because that's a relevant question. So the writers of this movie were like pop sci-fi, almost like if you've ever read like pulp comics and things like that. It was, it's pulp movies. Mm-hmm. So they had a lot of experience. And at the time, derby racing or like, I don't know, like racing was very popular. Like fucking Talladega Nights was, but back in the 70s, because of, what was that? The General Lee, that fucking car. I don't know.
Oh, Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah, like this cross country fucking wild crazy race was this like Americana thing to them because of drivers during the Prohibition. That's how it all started.
Okay.
They jammed it in with this sci-fi. There's actually another movie that they made called Cannonball. Like I thought, I remember Cannonball Run, which I think had John Candy in it. But, it's another, like, madcap racing movie. But with, I think, maybe less sci-fi dystopia, but I can't be sure because I haven't seen it yet.
Gotcha. The last pit stop is in Albuquerque, the place best known as where Bugs Bunny should have taken a left turn. Kit, please read this headline from March 30th, 1975, Albuquerque Journal.
Racetrack management school set. That's what a fucking gripping tagline.
Yep. When a bunch of Hispanically named security employees at the Santa Fe Downs racetrack lost their jobs, they went to the State Racing Commission claiming discrimination. The commission responded by recruiting a more ethnically varied cohort into a racetrack management school. So, that happened.
Wait. I mean, they did the right thing.
Yeah, they tried.
Yeah, that's fucking nice, actually. I mean, it sucks that it happened to those people that they were like, Rodriguez, fuck you, man.
Yep. Okay, Kit, tell us about Death Race 2000.
Death Race 2000 is directed by Paul Bartel. This is the only movie he's directed that I've seen, but now I know I need to see Cannonball with David Carradine, as I said. He was an actor that I have seen in Munchies as Dr. Crowder, and Frankenweenie as Mr. Walsh.
Okay, then.
It is written by Robert Thumb, who also did Death Race from 2008, which had Jason Statham in it. That's the reason I saw it. It's also written by Charles B. Griffith, who wrote Little Shop of Horrors. We've both seen. I have seen Barbarella. This guy has a fascinating trail of pulp, sci-fi, and fantasy credits. So I definitely want to see the rest of his catalog.
Right on.
Okay, it's also, there is a third writer, I.B. Melchior. I haven't.
Is that I.B. or is that Ib?
I have no fucking clue.
Ib Melchior.
You know what, Mr. or Mrs. Melchior? I haven't seen anything else you've done, but I desperately need to see Planet of the Vampires when we're done with this. Like, they have a pretty fantastic movie credit list of, like, possibly terrible pulp movies. Oh, it's great.
With a name like Ib Melchior.
Yeah, Mr. Melchior, Mr. whatever. It's like Shakespeare. No one knows. It's probably a team of writers, right?
Probably.
Mm-hmm. There are blurbs. George, did you want to read the blurb?
I'll read a blurb. IMDb and Amazon both say, in a dystopian future, a cross-country automobile race requires contestants to run down innocent pedestrians to gain points that are tallied based on each kill's brutality. That's all incorrect.
That is, yeah, it's vaguely adjacent to the movie.
The race doesn't require anybody to run down pedestrians, and the points aren't based on the brutality. They're based on who got run over.
It doesn't require you to run them down, but it requires you to kill. It's the death race. So bodies have to drop for you to get points. Now, I actually found something interesting from IMDb trivia. While not a direct tie-in item to the film, Exidy released an arcade video game in 1976, Death Race, that was inspired by it. The player controlled a vehicle in a playing field with little stick men running all around it. If any of the stick men were hit by the vehicle, they would scream and turn into a cross, and the player would gain points. The game started the first mass outcry against video game violence. I'm assuming Christians felt persecuted.
I mean, I don't assume Christians felt persecuted.
The cross,
I
think they were murdering.
Right. No, I'm just feeling a little erased as an atheist. If my stick figure got run over, I don't want to cross.
You want a little A with a circle.
Yep. Yeah, I think the parents were more upset about...
Because you're murdering people for points. It's a terrible thing. What a shitty... You choose the shittiest things to do. You remember the airplane... there was that game you have... It's not really a game. It was a computer program where you had an airplane and you tried to make it as aerodynamic as possible. It's like a paper plane.
Okay.
You try and see how much damage you did and had to do repairs for. It was not the point of the game was to have your plane or whatever go the longest distance possible. But we made a game of how badly we could crash the plane.
Of course we did.
Because we're terrible children. Kids will go for the shit. It's our responsibility to be no, stupid, bad. Here's a better thing.
Mm-hmm. So,
we should probably talk about the plot, shouldn't we?
We can actually talk about the movie, yeah.
Yeah. It begins with a black and white sketch of a funky car's back end and muffler with a body in starfish pose, like a dead body in the tire's hubcap reflection. I think it's supposed to be subtle and look like a landscape, but you can see it's a body. Yeah. It changes to marker colored stars and stripes theme on the car with a corpse in the hubcap looking kind of like a landscape, but more clearly a body. It then changes to the internals of the car with the corpse cap of the wheel definitely being a body, but red and connected by tubes and equipment to a green skull. Then returns to a normal tail end of the car, and you can definitely see that the body is a landscape. I don't know. I feel like it's out of order. But after a drum roll and a pen-drawn diamond font logo, we open to a brass band playing God Bless America, tuba in bass. They raise a kind of American flag, but with more red and probably more fascism too. It's got a fist with lightning in the center of it. Everything is still red, white, and blue though, and I can't help but go oof right in the environment as I see hundreds of patriotic balloons drift into the sky.
Yep.
The actual theme of everything though is pretty much orange, reds, and browns, and everyone is wearing jeans. I didn't realize until well into the description of writing the script that all of the workers that aren't in a white jumpsuit or whatever are in Texas tuxedos, and then all of the execs and military are in brown suits with the little red carnation, and everybody has big lapels. Lapels are big in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a pretty bored crowd and you go, hey now, what the fuck, when you see a guy waving a little Nazi flag. Mm-hmm. But soon you're distracted by probably an obvious sci-fi backdrop of a city. The future is now, George.
Yep.
And it's really static.
Yep, it did not move. No, they did have, though, like an aerial green monorail that would occasionally go across.
What? I didn't notice that there was a monorail. That was a cartoon. So you're telling me that wasn't just a static shot?
Yeah.
They had a cartoon and they just were like, you know what? Monorail. That's so weird. They shot this at a real sport place because it's really big and looks to have facilities to do a proper sport event. A dude in a white cardinal robe with silver fists on his chest addresses the crowd. This is Deacon. He's just known as the Deacon. Mm-hmm. He's played by Bill Murray, who I've seen in Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, and The John Larroquette Show.
Okay.
Just FYI, for Catholics, deacons are assistants to the regional priests and bishops. They don't wear any ceremonial gear and are usually married dudes who wish they had priest magic. So this is a made-up government religious official.
Yep.
They have, much like different militaries, they have different structures. The deacon explains that it's the 20th Intercontinental Road Race and that 5 people will compete, and that it's just as cool as Spartacus's enslaved death battles. Apparently, Americans have been doing this race thing to make other countries fear us. My brother once told me that if I desperately wanted to get out of a fight, I should slam my head against a nearby hard, flat surface and repeat, I'll kill you! I'll kill you! The logic, I think, is similar, and it doesn't not work.
Have you had an opportunity to test that?
More than you think.
Okay.
Cut to a guy in giant rose-tinted gold glasses that I need to own. A long tangerine organza scarf, wide fuchsia lapels, and a safari jacket. This is Junior Bruce, our pseudo-narrator, and a commentator for TV, as it says on the lucite rod he's using as a wireless mic. Mm-hmm. Junior Bruce is played by Don Steele, who we've both seen in Gremlins. Mm-hmm. We're first introduced to Calamity Jane and her navigator Pete, riding in on a bull-themed car with red eyes and horns.
Her fans and lovers everywhere wish Janie better luck this year.
My fans can wish me all the luck they want. If my luck with my lovers gets any better, I'll miss the race completely. Isn't that right, Pete?
Calamity Jane is played by Mary Woronov, and we've both seen her in Dick Tracy.
Mm-hmm. I could swear she's in... she's in a lot of these pulp movies that the writers write. Like, a lot of the writers wrote, like, it seems like they wrote in a group. So it's nice. Mm-hmm. They did good stuff. Well, fun stuff. Fun fact, all these cars were VW internals with Corvette style or modified body kits. They often didn't work, and the stunt people refused to drive them in public roads, as they were not street legal. So the stunt driver for those scenes was producer Roger Corman.
Huh. Mm-hmm. Can't get your stuntman to do it? Do it yourself.
Yeah, you had to. Grace Pander, commentator and close personal friend to everyone everywhere, is in a hallway being proposed to, I assume, by a house painter / Ghostbuster. No, that's a cameraman in a white onesie and a backpack kneeling down to get her in frame. This is unnecessary, as they are the same height.
Mm-hmm. And it's lovely seeing how then thought the future technology would be.
Yeah, it was just
because this is 1975, thinking cameras are going to be backpacks, but they'll be slightly smaller in the hand.
No, it was basically a large project box with a medium project box on the side with a hole in the front, so it's a pinhole camera. And then it has a tube to the backpack, which looks like cheap, hard carry-on luggage.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's much less technology that goes into this, obviously, than a Ghostbusters proton pack.
Fair.
How dare you? Also, no gun. You'd think in a fascist society, cameramen would have guns, but no. Grace Pander is played by Joyce Jameson, who I have seen in Tales of Terror from 1965, which hits a bit different as a toddler. The one she was in is actually one of my favorites. It involves a douchebaggy millionaire, hypnotism, and a cat.
These are a few of my favorite things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't love douchebaggy millionaires, but he was suffering. It was a tale of terror. Behind them, a scientist rolls a covered body past 2 MPs and explains that it's been in suspended animation to help heal from his limb transplant. The doctor scientist says he should be awake shortly, which is immediately. Reporters crowd Frankenstein, the patient, as we see from a POV shot. They ask him how things are abroad or in Moscow. Frank says the president is in his summer palace in Peking. Frankenstein is played by David Carradine, who we've both seen in Kill Bill Volume 1 and Kill Bill Volume 2, Kung Fu, and Kung Fu The Legend Continues. No, I've seen him in Dino Croc vs. Super Gator, Kung Fu Killer, King of the Hill as Junchiro, Titus, the TV show, Jackie Chan Adventures as Lo Pei, which surprised me. He was in the TV show Charmed, also on Profiler. Then there was Nosferatu, the First Vampire, a TV movie. He was on Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. He also was in Kung Fu, A Legend Reborn, the TV movie. And of course, Kung Fu, the movie. The actual in-theater movies he's been in that I've seen were Crank, High Voltage, Death Race, and Epic Movie. Do not recommend. He's also in Max Havoc, Curse of the Dragon. The new Swiss Family Robinson, which I'd forgotten. Karate Cop, Dune Warriors, and Sundown, The Vampire in Retreat. That's the movie I gave to Eli for our wedding. It is definitely it's a god-awful movie. The direct-to-video movies I've seen him in were Children of the Corn 5, Fields of Terror, and Martial Law.
David Carradine fan, are you?
I take note when I see him. It's because when I was a kid, I loved the Kung Fu The Legend Continues, and I didn't understand that he was a white guy playing a Chinese child from a temple wandering across the West. It was just cool. That's actually the reason he took this movie, is because he didn't want to be seen as this peaceful, sweet guy that he was in Kung Fu. So he's like, well, let me be kind of a bad guy and a monster. Yeah. And you see a lot of his body. Now we cut to Sieg Heil as a bunch of fans in the stands cheer for a modified Karmann Ghia designed to look like a World War II bomber that's been turned into a car. This is Matilda the Hun from Milwaukee and her Nazi navigator, Herman the German. They say, today California, tomorrow the world.
Yeah, they really focus in on Nazis being about world domination here.
I guess, they throw in a lot of jokes, but,
Matilda the Hun is played by Roberta Collins.
Herman the German is played by Fred Grandy. I've seen him in Love Boat. Calamity tells Herman that she hopes his bug bomb has a little more juice in its warhead this year. I'm not sure what it means, but Herman looks more chagrined than upset. Whatever it means, Matilda seems mad about it. We go back to a Frankenstein walk and talk with reporters, where they cleverly avoid shooting his face. This is when I noticed that every reporter but Grace is in full Texas tuxedo, ladies tie optional. Frank is caped in a latex suit and hood. They ask him about the president, his surgeries, and how he feels about his navigator.
How do you feel about going into the race with a navigator you've never met?
You'll love Annie. She's a red-hot sex pot.
She better be a red-hot navigator.
Yeah.
Frankenstein pushes past the reporters and the scientist shoos them away. He walks off squeaking into the distance, clearly having difficulties with movement.
Tight pants will do that.
Yeah, well, it almost, because he does this thing where he's when you're walking through water and your arms are out and you have to keep your balance. That's what he's doing in the suit. So I'm like, do you have problems seeing, bro? But nah, just walking. Next, we get to Nero, who's a Dubro, and his navigator, Cleopatra, who has a giant bunch of grapes. Their costumes, at best, have been seen once by someone from Rome. Nero is in leather patches, and Cleopatra is in an admittedly awesome gold gown, but it is not Roman emperor-y. No, I don't think so. The car would make sense if they themed it as a minotaur, but instead it's just the beast with pretty airbrush curls, headlight eyes, and some horn from spikes. I think because they had the bull, they didn't want to do another car with horns. And it's kind of shitty and smaller than the other cars, so that's fun.
Sit still, Cleopatra, and stop blocking me. My fans want to see me.
They've never seen a has-been before?
So Nero the hero is played by Martin Kove. We've both seen him in Wyatt Earp, The Karate Kid Part 2, The Karate Kid Part 3, and the Cobra Kai TV show. He was John Kreese from the Karate Kid things. He was the bad guy karate teacher in the original Karate Kid movie.
He was the teacher, not because they have the kid in the show, and then the teacher comes back, and did you ever finish watching that series?
Nope. When Cobra Kai got to the point where Daniel LaRusso and Johnny bring their forces and their kids all together, I stopped watching the show because that's where I want the story to end.
That's sweet. No, because they have to have other disasters.
Because chances are they're going to split up again and fucking be at each other's throats after they deal with Kreese. But I don't want to see that. I was just, nope, this is the perfect reconciliation thing. Great.
No, they got to have different problems now.
Mm-hmm.
Got to fuck someone's wife.
Okay, then.
Yep, that's what I did. Isn't that a kid's family show? It's a family show, isn't it? Is there a lot of...
Karate Kid?
Yeah, no,
Not really.
Cobra Kai.
Oh, no.
It's not a family show. You wouldn't show it to your kids?
It's for people who were fans of the original
it?
Karate Kid,
okay.
which is my age.
Well, it was a family movie. That was a movie for you to take your kids to. So I don't see why you wouldn't like...
I mean, you could, but also you don't want your kids getting ideas about beating each other up in school.
Well, we didn't then.
You didn't
anyway.
then.
Frankenstein makes his way over to Annie, who's leaning into the driver's seat of his car. Annie, his navigator, is played by Simone Griffith. I've seen Simone in the new Swiss Family Robinson. Other than that, I may have seen her in TV shows like TJ Hooker, Magnum P.I., The Golden Girls, Chips, The Dukes of Hazzard, Three's Company, The Incredible Hulk, and The $6 Million Man. We finally see Frankenstein's face. There's a wound under his left eye, and his teeth are exposed, as if his lip is pulled up from probably, assume, a burn. It's mostly just to make his face look weirder.
Mm-hmm.
Much like Matilda's accent, the lip thing comes and goes. The eye wound, however, looks fake as hell. In spite of being a red-hot sex pot, we find Annie to be a professional navigator in a responsible girl ponytail and a smart green jumpsuit to match his lizard-themed car. They have some boring banter about, race stuff, and we get more close-ups of bad makeup. The energy is ramped when Machine Gun Joe Viterbo arrives with his navigator, Myra.
Machine Gun Joe Viterbo is played by Sylvester Stallone, who I've seen in Rocky, and then Rocky 2, 3, 4, and 5, and Creed. Also, First Blood, Rambo First Blood Part 2, Tango and Cash, Stopper My Mom Will Shoot, Demolition Man, Judge Dredd, Ants, his voice, The Suicide Squad, his voice, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volumes 3 and 2. I also think voice.
I've seen him in just about everything you've seen him in, except for probably some of those Rockies. I've also seen him in Rambo Last Blood, Bullet to the Head, The Expendables, Rambo 2008, and Cobra.
Myra is played by Luisa Mortiz, who we've seen for the show in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
And I've seen her in Up in Smoke. Every achievement they attribute to Machine Gun Joe has an asterisk, which is behind Frankenstein. And he's mad about it. His car is a shiny black number with machine guns instead of headlights and a big bayonet blade in the middle.
It's a good thing they take their pit stops at night.
Why?
Because he doesn't have fucking headlights.
No, none of the cars have working headlights. That's why they're not street legal. That's what you do to derby cars. Because they need to look stupid. Actually, it's to keep them lighters. You want to take off as much gear as possible. He sprays a bunch of Frankenstein fans with a Tommy gun, which kills no one. They just boo. Then you see a 10-year-old who's climbed a flagpole who cries out that Frankenstein has arrived. They describe how he's been torn to shreds with... not the child. They describe how Frank has been torn to shreds with most of his body in a pulpy, reconstructed mess from running this race. Joe spits on his car, and Frank tells him he'll regret it. We get a great view of all the cars as they pan across. Then they cut to the Summer Palace and Mr. President.
Mr. President is played by Sandy McCallum.
Yes. In a smoky golden room up a shit ton of stairs, a man reaches out to camera with open arms. He's been president for life since taking over after the world crash of 1979. I'm not sure exactly what he's saying, but there's people sacrificing comfort for advancement or something about minority privilege as well.
Once more, I give you what you want.
Yeah, and that's the death race. Does he do his hand down or up?
No, he just puts it up. And then...
Harold, the radio reporter, is calling the race from the studio. Harold is played by Carl Benson. Everyone gets cool dramatic close-ups, and there is much cool driving. There were some fun camera tricks here messing with the film speed because the cars were so garbage.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't notice it until I was reading it, because we bought this movie because I'm like, I'll just watch this over and over. It's a good time, people. It's barely an hour.
It's an hour and 17.
The president gets on TV in front of his giant red Electrofist America flag to remind us of our American tradition. No holds barred. A group of rebels, including Lieutenant Fury and leader Thomasina Payne, give us some great exposition now.
Thomasina Payne is played by Harriet Medden.
We both seen her in The Terminator, and I've seen her in The Witches of Eastwick and The Killing Time. I'm very surprised you've never seen The Witches of Eastwick.
I'm not. I haven't seen a lot of movies.
That's true. That is very true. Lieutenant Fury is played by Vince Tronca.
And I've seen him in The Wizard, a wonderful movie about the video game Super Mario Brothers 3.
It's okay. Wait, is it a documentary?
No.
Wait.
It is a cross-country journey of a child as he goes to compete in a video game tournament.
Okay.
It also introduced the Power Glove to the populace.
I may have seen that.
You may have.
That's stupid.
You may have tried to forget it, too.
Probably, because the Power Glove is garbage.
I had one. I never used it.
The great disappointment that is most children toys that we thought were going to be super excellent and cool, but they lied to us because no one was policing them.
I had one. I never used it as the Power Glove.
You used it, I assume, to jack off as a robot.
As you're playing games. Hey, I have a wrist-mounted laser gun.
Oh, okay. So you used it
aesthetically.
Yeah. If you ever get a hold of fluorescent lights, you're immediately a Jedi with a very breakable stick. The rebels plan to hold Frank as a hostage because he's super BFFs with the president. Thomasina demands that they stick to non-violent protest. We find out that Annie is a rebel and the granddaughter of Thomasina Payne. Meanwhile, Annie and Frank are chatting about his effed up body while he drives. They spend a lot of time talking about Frank's damages all the time throughout the movie, most of the day.
Pretty sure some of the things were mutually exclusive.
It'd be like, hey, Steve, you know how you got that plate in your head and then the colonoscopy in 72? Everyone's coming up and be like, remember when you got that kidney transplant? All the shit that yeast infection in 68. That was rough. They replaced your vagina. Did they, Frank? All right, excellent. They know everything about him. It's very upsetting. He goes through a laundry list of his repairs and eventually offers to show his mangled face to her like it's a sixth toe or something. The music gets all foreboding, as if spiders will crawl out of his mask. She pulls off his mask while he's driving, and violins start to play. David Carradine is revealed, unblemished.
What'd you expect? Another pretty face?
Yeah. It was a bad joke. It wasn't that great a joke for the movie. It's just people, I guess, thought David Carradine was beautiful. And that also is a problem for me. So as much as I am a fan, I think that David Carradine is a very homely, I'm just not,
It's not that, he wasn't that great.
No, I'm not into him. I'd be like, let's just be friends, David. I don't, see, but...
He always looked to me prematurely Uncanny Valley old.
I'm very glad, though. Oh, no. I get the feeling that I'm going to find a movie where David Carradine is pretending to be a Native American.
It's a non-zero probability.
Yeah, it's the 70s. Oh, well. Now, Myra is being an excellent navigator for Machine Gun Joe as they come across a road crew. Why anyone would schedule road work on today is baffling to me. But 5 guys run and a jackhammer operator gets red wax murdered to the crotch by the car's bayonet.
Yep.
All the blood in this movie is real waxy red.
That was my first question, was why? They knew this was today. Why would they be doing road work?
Yep. Junior is excited by his clean kill where there's no pain for the target. Here is where we find out people being murdered equate to points. Machine Gun Joe gets first kill on the board. Frank decides his car needs on-the-go maintenance and has Annie climb on the chassis to fix it while he drives. This is a prank, I guess, and probably very funny to the same people that pull forward when you reach the car door handle.
Yep, that fucking... Instantly, yeah. Anybody who does that, you're not in my life anymore.
I've done that to you.
You were the exception.
But you know what I do?
You're not going to do it again.
It's a rule of 3s. Honestly, you really should only ever do it twice. 3 times in your dick for that one.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. I mean, my dad used to do it to me. Harold, from his befurned and draped room, goes over the point system.
Women are still worth 10 points more than men in all age brackets, but teenagers now rack up 40 points, and toddlers under 12 now rate a big 70 points. The big score, anyone, any sex, over 75 years old, has been upped to 100 points.
Yep, and that's where you get your point system. Mm-hmm. Now, a matador challenges Calamity and her bull in the Pennsylvania shrubland that looks specifically like California and loses. Junior makes a bull's ear pun. We see the nurses rolling geriatrics into the street. To be fair, they look pretty unaffected, but it's clear they're being rolled out for murder cars. Mm-hmm. You have the soundtrack to this movie is great. You have some background music and pictures of like some delighted old people that are just happy to get some sun. Frank decides to hop the curb and take out the nurses and doctors instead. We see some cartoon-esque flying bodies, and that's pretty nice. Mm-hmm. The rebels think it was Annie that saved the old folks, and the commentators cite Frank's red-blooded American sense of humor and fairness. Lieutenant Fury, putting on a fancy wide-brimmed sunbonnet, tells Thomasina Payne that he's going to start the violence against her wishes. She dramatically calls for Operation Anti-Race to begin. You think they'd have begun it before sending Annie out, but...
Right.
Like, you clearly already have your plan going, and he's like, we're gonna do the plan, and she's like, okay.
Okay, we're doing the plan.
As you've already started it 2 years ago. Nero and his navigator are arguing about how he didn't kill a Boy Scout camp. As they come across a family picnic, the mother, who, as we know from the bonnet, is Lieutenant Fury in disguise, leaves her baby on the blanket and runs with the rest of the picnickers. We see the Beast bearing down on the baby doll head, and then boom, explosion. Points to pyrotechnics, it 100% looks like that car hit a landmine. Mm-hmm. Junior and the producers are in a panic and cut to Grace in a studio living room, a.k.a. her home. Yep. With her is Miss Rhonda Bainbridge, the first widow of the first murder in the race by Machine Gun Joe. Rhonda gets her own apartment in Acapulco. Rhonda also gets a 50-inch, 3-dimensional octophonic TV.
Throw in words at technology to make it sound cool.
Many technology words. We see the rebels powering up a 4-foot-long person-wide light bulb. Then it's wonky touchscreen into black and white with Thomasina Payne appearing before crossed 50-star flags. On behalf of the rebels, she takes responsibility for the murder of Nero and states their grievances. Apparently, people are being micromanaged down to eating and rest hours. I'm not clear, but there's apparently oppression happening. I'd say that's fair once I realized that, like, everyone had the same clothes. Even the rebels have their own uniform. I think they're supposed to be, like, tree farmers. The country has, it's a lightning inside of a tree. That's weird. There's a lot of weird symbolism that no one explains to you in this movie.
I think the lightning inside of a tree, because Thomas Paine talked about the Tree of Liberty.
Maybe. It's like Team Rocket wearing the rocket gear, and like you just walk around with that, and no one's like, "Hey, those are those criminals, Team Rocket." Like the government doesn't notice.
We declare war upon the bipartisan party, on Mr. President, and on that most inhuman desecration of life and liberty, the transcontinental road rape. I thank you.
Very clearly says rape.
Yeah, it's 100%. Someone fucking, there's a dude in the writer's room that's why they made the movie. Yeah. That was the original name of the movie. That's true. No one Google that. They were like, nah, let's call it Death Race. Calamity and Matilda ask their cars for info, but get back and I have no further information.
They're asking Alexa.
Yeah, apparently, so I didn't really mention it, but there's a map that you see, and it looks like something that even Carmen Sandiego is like, nah, man, you can't use that map. But I think they're supposed to have a little AI car. Annie is concerned Frank doesn't care about the terrorists. He just wants to win. Matilda bursts through a bad rebel barricade with a Zig Heil for no reason other than that they need to do something with the characters.
Which they didn't. I mean, but the movie is only an hour and change.
Well, they need to just show them driving. Like, when they show one, it's kind of nice that everybody gets a good amount of screen time. Now, Joe Viterbo comes across two guys hanging a Frankenstein sign over the street and decides to kill the one he knocks off a ladder. The other guy gives him a thumbs up, and he smushes the prone man's head into red wax tire tracks. The camera shows the navigators back in the garage, wiping down the cars in tandem, while the camera pans over Nero's car's twisted wreckage. Now, a character named Special Agent walks up in a brown suit and orange carnation. All of the drivers are getting massaged in a giant room with much orange seating. He asks the drivers not to talk about Nero and that he hit a tree. Joe knows it's the rebels. Grace is with a dear friend of hers, Matilda, who says some Nazi stuff, and I'm pretty sure calls women the master race. Matilda and Jane start arguing about whiz-bang and Tilda's navigator, but honestly, I don't care. Both of them are naked and super comfortable with it. They look fantastic. And not lewd. Like, if you watch
it's
this,
very
there's
artful nudity.
There's a lot of, like, nudity or semi-nudity in this movie where, like, it's very comfortable. It's not gross. It's not like that one terrible movie where they were raping a bunch of nuns you watched where you're like, eh. I mean, obviously, when you sexually assault someone, it's eh.
Yes, every time.
Now, you know, it's possibly gratuitous in this movie, but it's the 70s. So I think they were just like, free body, free love. Jane threatens Matilda, and Matilda says some more Nazi stuff. Frank obviously isn't naked with everyone else. He's back in his full gimp zipper suit and being followed by Junior and Grace, a dear friend of his. She asks him in purple prose how it feels to kill.
You stand in the middle of Route 66 tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, and you can answer that question for yourself.
But that wouldn't tell her how it feels to kill. That would tell her how it feels to die.
That's fair. I mean, being part of the process does give you experience, though, you know?
Yeah, but when that experience ends, all of your experience ends.
What's he fucking supposed to say, George? Next time you're out grocery shopping, run down
great.
a child?
It feels great, Grace. You should try it sometime.
I'm sure you need a license for that. He sees Joe talking with Annie and walks over to Myra, who's not at all welcoming. He tells her to tell Joe he was whispering sweet nothings in her ear and tries to feed her a strawberry. She tells Joe, he said, there was nothing sweet in my ear, and then Joe hits a woman. It really ruined my time looking at my favorite naked body in the movie. Frank runs into a schoolgirl in an F shirt in the hall. That's a super fan. She's introducing herself not for sex, but because she wants him to know who she is. She knows him from what she's learned in dreams and astrology. It's super clear that she's human sacrificing herself, but they talk around it like it's a fucking Sphinx riddle.
Yes, they do.
Yep. Frank and Annie have a giant room that's clearly a soundstage as it has big-ass double doors in the corner. Like, I expected a basketball team to, like, run and be like, what happened to the court? All the furniture is still red and orange. Everything's, like, red and orange except for, I think, the news, what's that? Howard's place, which has pink drapes. While Frank is taking off his clothes, Annie is explaining that she gave Joe a bad detour. To make it work, Joe has to be ahead of them or see them take the detour. Frank starts showing more skin, and Annie begins to go over his injury list again. Frank, now in black undies, one glove, and pale legs, puts his mask on and asks her to dance. Much like when your partner asks you if you want a sexy back rub, it ends quickly and with a joke about showing her what else the scientists have replaced. They pitch a dramatic pose on the bed and fade to black.
Yeah, we've played that thing. You know, you've asked what was replaced on me a number of times.
Yeah. Show me your injuries. No, we don't do that.
No.
Don't tell people we do that. Trumpets blare as the deacon is clearly performing a sermon for Great President and Frankenstein. Frank drops his glove at the starting line, and when they all start off, he turns the car around to get it. He runs down the deacon as he picks it up.
One of the funniest moments in the movie. For no reason.
There's some good moments in the movie. Apparently, race officials were immune previously, but now race officials are points. Joe is furious and apparently drooling that Frank got more points, so he starts angry driving to his rival. We see a gaggle of girls in school skirts and F-shirts run out the road, revealing the girl from last night in a folksy wedding dress. Minuet music is playing in the background. The sun shines above her. There's a flash of orange zinnia flying in the air.
Oh, why did she do that?
Show me she loves me.
Yeah. Annie, for someone who's seen a lot of people get murdered, she's so surprised. Oh my God, when that girl dies. It's a weird response. Next, we see 3 aged punks in the road who've decided to play chicken and see who jumps down a manhole first before one of the cars gets them. Calamity Jane sees the chicken gang, and Pete says, "Chicken in a basket?"
Chicken in a casket!
One jumps and then the other. They close the manhole on the last guy, who flies through the air. Even though he clearly could not have died, he's super dead. There's a lot of "I've been gently tapped into death" by these victims. Then the other 2 punks peek to see their dead body and get their heads crushed into more red wax by Machine Gun Joe, running them over from behind. Matilda is up Jane's ass while Joe debates the detour. Myra recommends not to take it, so he takes it and threatens her with violence if Frank talks to her again. Annie recommends Frank goes to kill a bunch of congressmen through his cyclone fence. Don't ask me what that is, but apparently it's difficult to breach. The rebels are setting up a trap and have another dude in a zipper gimp suit to trade places with him. Frank runs across the trap and kills the faux Frank. I will note that faux Frank had an actual gimp mask with zippers on it, unlike Frank's molded mask. Someone totes brought that from home because they had to explain why they bought it to their mom. Frank starts questioning Annie, but she's being vague. He's clearly suspicious of her. They stop, and he makes her switch to driving. Joe hits the dead end of the detour and is mad. There's a chatty fisherman who irritates him so much with his pleasantness that Joe decides to run him down in the shallow riverbed. To be honest, there was terrain and bogs that would have made this a difficult or impossible vehicular homicide, so this fisherman did deserve to die, much like Mad Max's wife and baby. I'm impressed how they were able to maintain the red wax explosion in the water. Matilda yells "Blitzkrieg" as she runs down Pete while he's doing some work on the undercarriage for Jane. Jane jets off after her.
Uh-oh, here she comes, and boy is she pissed.
Well, what does she expect? You leave your navigator lying around? Naturally, somebody's gonna run over him.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. There's some nice driving to classical music, and Matilda starts talking in German swear gibberish while they drive through the mud. A road crew puts up a detour, and we see them raising a fake tunnel worthy of Looney Tunes' scheme. The Nazi takes the detour, and her car rolls end over end down a cliff until it explodes. As Jane overlooks Matilda's burning corpse, Junior is corrected in the studio by Secret Agent. She did not get blown up. She made an impressive score. Please stand by. Annie is still driving, and we see a kid in overalls and Bernie Mac dress shirt playing push the tire in the road. He tells her to hit the kid, and she misses by swerving to the other side of a tree, off the road. I think this is supposed to be a lesson in killing, but or grief? What?
I don't know.
I guess it's a lesson in making her uncomfortable and why are you such a judgy? See you next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Frank has Annie stand in front of the car and ask her where the penitence compound is. She says Japan. Apparently this is the wrong answer. She gets in the car and he interrogates her more. She breaks under no pressure whatsoever. She explains that they want to ransom him to the president, who loves him, for the cancellation of the race, and they drive off while he laughs. After a saxophone dance party, dinner is happening for the drivers and apparently Secret Agent Man as well. We see Grace is in funeral gear with Harold on TV mourning Matilde. Myra looks amazing, and Joe is covered in clam chowder. I actually thought that was like cake or something at first. Everyone is asking for bodyguards. 2 other secret agents with many pens in their pockets asked to speak with Frank privately. Just a note here. He's been eating either breadsticks or carrots. I cannot tell. I assume it's because of his mask. A secret agent tries to tell the drivers that Thomasina was some mental patient that busted into his studio, but Joe calls bullshit. Joe throws clam chowder, which is what he's eating, in a secret agent's face. This is fair because secret agent was threatening to kill him, and again, threatens to have Joe killed. Joe breaks a violin and storms out. The agents, with Frank, grill him about the ambush and why he took the detour. He covers for Annie and squeaks away dramatically with his cape. Myra is the only one left in the room as Frank returns. The president has explained that it's not rebels, but the French. Frank tells Myra not to eat the crepe Suzettes.
Yeah, the government in this is hard going against the French and blaming that. So apparently, this United States owns all of North America, probably all of South America, and most of Asia, and only Europe remains outside of our influence.
So that's not the case. Like, I think he's supposed to have, like, most of America, the Americas, but, like, the reason people are upset is because he's staying outside of the company. Like, and he has, like, their main embassy, like, outside of the country.
Okay.
So, like, he's not living at home. That's why later, it's why later on, like, they want to bring America back to America. They want to make America great again. That's what these rebels want to do. I'm assuming this is
here. There is a great to go back to. Yes.
Yeah, I'm assuming this is a Cold War thing. Like, there's a bunch of, like, political shit I don't understand, or someone's bored.
Yeah.
Like, they're just like, please, we're not communists. Annie is getting something out of Frank's car and gets waylaid by Joe. She apologizes for the dead end, but he doesn't want to forgive. He says, like, all the creepy guy things you do when you're about to hurt a woman alone, and starts to choke her. When he tells her she has a minute and a half to live, like, he's trying to kill her, not just, like, hurt her. Fortunately, he lets her go when Frank saunters over in his rubber suit. Joe makes excuses, but Frank has none of it. Here we get our only real punch fight of the movie with David and Stallone. There's lots of good biffs and bamps from them both, so it feels like an earned win for Frank, who shows a close-up of Joe's contorted and red wax-covered face before he throws machine gun against his own car. Actually, it was a pretty good punchy fight. Like, it's not the mixed martial arts we have in Marvel films today, but...
No, it's a good old-timey fight.
Yeah, it's not as shitty as those old, like, the ones where it's just like, Oxbury rules, let us punch to the fight at the end of the fight. Mm-hmm. I'm going to smack your kisser with my fist. Frank and Annie talk as they're doing their nightly undressing and argues that she should give up her plan and save herself. This is where we get his story. He explains that he's just one Frank in a long line of lab-raised Franks, and he wants to be the last. They pose dramatically again on the bed while she asks about the glove he never removes. He also says that he has no Swiss doctors, just Native American know-how.
Just Native American know-how. Yes.
I wonder if he is Native. He might be Native American. The next morning, Annie promises not. I'm pretty sure he's super into Native American stuff because of the Wild West thing in Kung Fu. Yeah, he was a spiritual dude that loved tying himself up. You know, if you know anything about David Carradine, he died doing what he loved. Now, the next morning, Annie promises not to mess with the race during safety checks, and Joe is being mocked by his crew for his shiner. Jane, who's wearing the world's shortest and cutest dress, says some nice things to Frank and Annie, wishing them luck, and she tries to do the same to Joe, but he's mad. Like, she definitely wins Miss Congeniality. Yeah. Joe decides to kill his road crew as he takes off by backing over them. Myra, blessedly not deterred by Joe's threats of domestic violence, sasses him when he ignores her advice and chases Frank.
So what? If there's trouble up ahead, he'll find it first.
Oh, yeah. Take a look at your face. You'll find it first.
You know, Myra, some people might think you're cute. But me, I think you're one very large baked potato.
Oh, she's so fucking cute. Now, in the studio, Junior and Grace go over the routes, and Grace starts telling a story about Joe abusing a snake with his bike. The rebels try to force her off the road as they ride tandem on a motorcycle. One gets killed trying to take over her car, and she chases the other into a minefield. She stops before hitting a mine, and as she's executing a 3-point turn, she hits it and then explodes. Meanwhile, Frank sneakily drugs Annie by slipping the brightest gel capsule possible whole into the water bottle. She comments that at least the French can't poison them, which is weird since she knows the French could give a shit. Mm-hmm. We get an aside with the rebels where Thomasina Payne has decided to be there at the finish. Annie is super drugged while a plane tries to flag Frank down. Frank won't stop and the plane threatens to bomb him. The pilot thinks drugged Annie is dead. So we get a bomber car chase that while Machine Gun watches from an overlook.
The pilot was Lieutenant Fury.
Oh, was that Lieutenant Fury?
Yeah.
I thought that was just some dude. All those fucking dudes look alike.
Yep.
Joe smartly decides to book it to the finish line before he's noticed. Now, a rebel car also takes up the chase, but it rolls over and explodes. There's far more explosions, loud whining noises, and then a drum roll as the plane explodes. Annie comes to, and Frank explains that he knocked her out and killed the guy in the plane. She's pretty stoic about it until she realizes that Frank has been hit in the shoulder. Then she tries to drive them off a cliff. You're hurt. Die with me.
Yep.
No. He gets control of the car, and then they just walk to the edge to stand dramatically over a majestic vista to argue. Like, he explains why winning is so important. It's because he needs to shake hands with the president.
I thought the only thing you cared about was winning the race.
Sure. Only the winner of the race is to shake hands with Mr. President.
Is that a grenade?
A hand grenade.
We're back with Joe, who's tearing ass across the California countryside. He declares to Myra that he wants to win for hate. One big victory for hate. Frank starts pulling up from behind, and cool guitar riffs start to play over the revving motors and squeal of tires. Joe spits oil out the back of his car, making Frank go off the road and through a bunch of lightly smashable obstructions until he's back on the road, neck and neck with Joe. Annie demands Frank's hand and tosses it into Myra's lap. It falls in the wheel well while she and Joe are screaming at each other. Then boom, Stallone is out. With no hand grenade, we have no plan though. Frank seems worried, but Annie seems to have an idea. Music note, someone played this harpsichord in reverse.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like Annie is playing the four-dimensional chess here.
Yeah, I guess so. She's the only one that knows everybody's plans, so she's a smart lady. The president is on stage giving a patriotic speech about national virtue and fuck the French. He declares Frank will lead them in a war against the French. Sadly, as he embraces Frank, Frank is shot. Surprise, it's Annie. They rip off her mask.
She's shot by Thomasina Payne.
She is shot by Thomasina Payne. Frank pops out of the car with a bloody shoulder still and runs into the podium with the car, which collapses and kills the president with gravity. Another one of those lightly tapped murders. Mm-hmm. Annie is perfectly fine from her gunshot wound and holds up his arm in victory.
Like, surprise. She fell unconscious from the gunshot wound and then is just up.
I mean, she's a woman. She probably had the vapors. It's all too much. They cut to Frank's wedding day with Annie, and he tells reporters that he's going to make sweeping changes and appointed Thomasina Minister for Domestic Security.
To be clear here, Frankenstein is now the president.
Yeah, he's just immediately the president. And that's when I was saying, like, the president was in, like, the summer palace and stuff in Japan. Like, that's a real place.
Yeah.
That's not, like, his summer palace. He was constantly out of the country. So that's why in that he's like, I'm bringing the capital back to America. I'm staying in the city and stuff like that. So people were like, oh, he's a real American.
Okay.
And he probably loves Jesus, too.
Probably.
Now, Junior is not happy. He panics about Frank canceling the race and blocks Frank's car.
President Frankenstein, you can't call off the race. The American people won't stand for it.
Get out of the way, Junior.
The race is the symbol of everything we hold dear, our American way of life. Sure, it's violent, but that's the way we love it. Violent, violent, violent. And that's why we love you.
Annie's had enough. And Frank, a loving husband, gently taps Junior with his car to a death that left no red wax.
Nope.
Now the crowd cheers, and only Harold, shocked and saddened, picks up Junior's scarf from the ground. We hear him monologue over the credits, but it gets cut off on streaming.
And you'll have to wait to hear it here because it's our end clip because we didn't have one.
Oh, no, I was going to read the whole thing because we don't have the whole clip, do we?
I do have the whole clip.
You got the whole thing?
I got the
Who's
whole
a smart man? Where did you get it? Is it because
I got
we
it off
own
Amazon.
it? Even the end?
Yeah.
Is it because we own it or?
I don't know.
Because it didn't show.
I think it's because doing if you didn't have up next selected.
Oh, got you. All right. Well, George. It's because I'm usually, because I've been saying Joe, Machine Gun Joe the whole time.
So, Kitt, does this still work?
I mean, in that 2000 has passed, like logic, like alternate dimension, I would still watch it. Like no one actually got raped. The bad guys got killed. There was no blackface. There were some brown people in it. So there's something. You know, it was
the nudity is tasteful.
The nudity is tasteful. It wasn't lewd or gross. Like, honestly, like it's not a bad.
All the people who do bad things die.
Yeah, and you know, a great thing about this movie is even though it's like it's an hour long, but it feels like there's so much more to it. Like the plot may be great. I might not be like, well, that's just gibberish. There, it feels like you saw a story.
It's
like
dumb,
you feel like you know.
It's not complicated.
Yeah,
it's
like
action filled.
People who don't know, I read an excessive amount of books. Last year, I read probably around like 800 books. I'll admit some of them were novellas, but like it's a good story is like it's like a meal, you know. And this one, it's better than junk food. And I mean, it may not be a steak dinner, but it's a good time. Like it's a fun movie.
Yeah, it's a snack movie. Yeah. It's a you want to watch.
No, better than a snack. Like it's a full, like they give you a lot.
Yeah, it's fine. Especially like the best thing about the movie is that it's just over an hour long.
That's not the best. There's plenty of awesome things about the movie.
This is the opinion part.
How dare you?
Like I don't have a problem with the morals in the movie. It's supposed to be a dystopia. It is where a bunch of tropes that we still carry today come from, and many of us just didn't know because I'd never seen it before.
Like, I can tell that people enjoyed making it.
Yeah.
Like, even with the soundtrack, people took the fucking time to be like, let's give this a decent soundtrack.
So I'm going to say, yeah, it still works.
Yeah, watch it anytime. I mean, if you don't think it still works, tell me why.
Mm-hmm.
Email me at dtswpod@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm. All right, Kit. So... thank you for sitting in for Joe. I needed somebody this week.
I am glad. Anytime Joe's out of town, I will take advantage.
And thank you for writing a summary that was 2.5 times as long as I asked for.
I had a good time. I'm just going to start writing summaries of movies for funs now. Now, next week, I guess you and Joe will be back.
Mm-hmm.
And you two will be talking about Doubt from 2008.
Yep.
Now, does that sound like you're going to tell people what movie that is? You should listen to this one.
It is a psychological drama.
Psychological drama.
Mm-hmm.
Fun.
About a church.
I'm glad I'm not going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I guess that's it for this episode, is it, George?
Yeah, so I guess that's it for this episode. I'm George Romacka. Thanks for listening.
And I'm Kitt Nowokunski. Thanks for listening indeed, because if a podcast drops and there's nobody around to hear it, it's just another collection of ones and zeros that doesn't matter.
As to this matter of violence, the technique of violence was first developed in 2 million BC by the Australopithecines, a tribe of 4-foot primates who had no brains to speak of, but who, nevertheless, invented the tomahawk and used it on each other. This practice led to the enlargement of the brain, another useful weapon. Yes, murder was invented even before man began to think. Now, of course, man has become known as the thinking animal.
You've been listening to Does This Still Work? Produced by Joe Dixon and George Romacka. The hosts can be reached via social media, email, or the contact page at dtswpod.com. Be good to yourself and others, because that still works. You're George Dixon.
That's what I get for search and replace.
You married George. Or you married Joe. Is there a personality trait that you would like to adopt from one of your friends?
Is it better to read books in electronic form or actually hold the book?
What is the most recent life lesson you learned, George?
What is the strangest way that you met one of your friends?